So we've got 4 brand new baseball Hall of Famers: Edgar Martinez, Roy Halladay, Mike Mussina, and Mariano Rivera. And I've got to give credit where credit is due because, first of all, they didn't have to vote in Mike Mussina this year, and they did. Over the past couple of years, it really seemed like the writers were really just giving Mussina a hard time. You know, what more did the guy have to do? I mean, sure, Mussina was not. He wasn't the best baseball player. He wasn't the best pitcher of his generation. But he was one of them. He was one of the best. Yes, he didn't get 300 wins, but he got 270. Yeah, he didn't win a World Series, but he was a good postseason pitcher, a very good postseason pitcher. I became a fan of Mike Mussina years after he retired. And, you know, looking back on his career, he was damn good. And he was better than a lot of people give him credit for being. This man pitched in the steroid era. He pitched in the AL East, and he dominated. He dominated his entire career. Back when wins really mattered, he picked up 270 wins while pitching his entire career in the AL East. That to be honest, that's all that needs to be said. That's all that really needs to be said. But no, he was a phenomenal pitcher. He wasn't a Cy Young pitcher. He didn't win any World Series. In a sense, he was very, 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 very good. But he was not outstanding. Mike Mussina got in after 7 years on the ballot. 7 years. Because the writers wanted to make a point. That's all it was about. They just wanted to make a point that he was a 7th ballot Hall of Famer. You know, these writers, as much as I'm praising them this year, these writers have some big egos. They want to make it all about them. And it's a shame because there are so many guys. There's so many guys that should be Hall of Famers that aren't, or that are going to get in on the 10th ballot or the 9th ballot, all because they want to make a point. But that very well may be and can be a whole nother discussion. I want to move on. Roy Halladay. Roy Halladay, many of you guys know, was one of my favorite pitchers. And he's another one that he became one of my favorite pitchers very, very late in his career. But you know what? I respected so much about him. Probably more than any pitcher in the history of baseball, excluding Sandy Koufax. Because Roy Halladay went about it so differently than any other pitcher I've ever seen. It wasn't just business. It wasn't just a game to Roy Halladay. He wanted to be perfect. His goal was to be perfect. And inevitably he was. He was perfect. He became perfect. He literally became perfect when he pitched that perfect game in 2010. And if you haven't heard the stories, you know, the Philly fans, they know the stories. The Blue Jay fans, they know the stories. If you're a baseball fan like me, a fanatic like me, you know the stories of Roy Halladay. You know, working out at 3, 4 a.m. before anybody else. He was done with his workouts hours before his teammates came in. And ultimately, him being literally a workhorse. He was a horse. He was a literal horse. He put an entire pitching staff on his back. And he was phenomenal. For he dominated for a decade. For a decade, he dominated and was the best pitcher in all of baseball. We talk about Clayton Kershaw now being the best pitcher of his generation. Right before him was Roy Halladay. You can sprinkle in the guys. You can make an argument, Justin Verlander, King Felix, but you got to remember, these guys, they came in 2005, 2004, 2006. Roy Halladay, was here before that. He was dominating in 2002, 2003, around that time. I don't know what year it was exactly. It might have been 2003. It might have been 2002. But he pitched 266 innings. 266 innings. And he started like 36 games or something like that. And I think he was the last person to ever pitch that many innings. That's the stuff from the 1960s. And, I literally can go on for another 20, 25, 30 minutes simply talking about Roy Halladay. Because there were so many things about him that really mesmerized me. He did stuff that was of a folktale. He did stuff that was of legend. And he strived to be perfect again. And that's what he was. So, Roy Halladay, and I've said it once in the comments of one of the videos that I made of him, if I could pick any pitcher of the 2000s, just one, it would be Roy Halladay. Because I knew I could count on him. He would be my horse. He would be my ace. He was phenomenal in the postseason. He was phenomenal in the regular season. If you needed him to win games, he'd win games. Anything you asked of him, anything you expected of Roy Halladay, you got from him. And well-deserved. First ballot Hall of Fame. And you know what? The day he retired, I remember the day he retired, I was sitting in my astronomy class in college, and, I was checking my phone, and I saw him holding a press conference of his retirement. And I was heartbroken, and I said on that day, I think it was back in 2013. Yeah, the offseason of 2013. I said, I can't wait to see him inducted into the Hall of Fame in 5 years because, in my opinion, he's a first ballot Hall of Famer. And here we are, full circle. Unfortunately, he's not here. Unfortunately, he won't be able to give his speech in Cooperstown, but here or not, Roy Halladay will always live in our hearts, and he made a lasting impact on not just me, but a lot of people, so well-deserved. Well-deserved for Roy Halladay. Moving on, Mariano Rivera. Sandman. The first unanimous Hall of Fame inductee in the history of baseball. To be honest, again, I think the baseball writers, they really do. They like messing around, and I think they like trying to prove points and make points, and it's stupid, Yes, Mariano Rivera is and should be a unanimous Hall of Famer. My issue with this is he should not have been the first unanimous inductee, first ballot inductee. It's ridiculous. It just is. But Mariano, I was talking about the legend, the myth, the folktale of Roy Halladay. You talk about Mariano Rivera, broken bats, Postseason legend. Postseason legend. I was reading today, more men have walked on the moon than Mariano Rivera has given up runs in the postseason. It was like 11, no more than 11 or something like that, which is insane. You got to remember, he was a part of the golden age of the Yankees, the last golden age of the Yankees. And he was a part of all of those phenomenal years that the Yankees had. All of those postseason championships, all of those World Series championships. He was there closing out those games. And he didn't disappoint. I didn't watch a lot of Yankee games. I've never, watched a lot of AL games in general. I've always been more of a National League guy, but, you don't have to watch the games to realize how dominant some guys are. And today we got guys like Mike Trout, Clayton Kershaw, Justin Verlander. You hear how great these guys are, have been, how automatic they are. And Mariano was that automatic closer. He was sensational. You hear about how they talk about him. After his career's, been over for 5 years, you just hear. It doesn't matter who's talking about Mariano Rivera. You won't hear one bad thing said about the man. Not one negative thing is said about him. And it speaks to his character. It's another thing about him. He was an outstanding human being. He was never known to be an egotistical person. He played the game the right way with integrity. He's another guy. He's another guy with Roy Halladay. That you really couldn't have picked a better person at that position, at their given position, like Roy Halladay, than Mariano Rivera. He's Mr. Closer, the greatest closer of all time, and probably, most likely, he will be the greatest closer of all time. Last but not least, Edgar Martinez, voted in on his final year, I believe. I think it was his final year on the ballot. It's a shame. It's a shame. Just like Mike Mussina. You guys are the writers, and I know I keep going back to it, but I have to. Because you guys are trying to prove a point. You guys are trying to prove a point. A point that doesn't need to be made. No one cares about it. Edgar Martinez should have been a Hall of Famer years before. Mike Mussina should have been a Hall of Famer years before. Do I believe that everyone needs to be a first ballot Hall of Famer? No, I don't. No, I don't. And I'm not saying that he should have been a first ballot Hall of Famer. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that Mike Mussina should have been a first ballot Hall of Famer. There are people that will argue that he should have been. There are people that will argue that no, he shouldn't have. That's not what I'm arguing. What I'm saying is there is no reason to have these legends wait so long to get called into the Hall of Fame. It's not fair. It's not right. It's it's ridiculous. And before this year, I started to give up on the Hall of Fame because I've seen these players just not been given the justice that they deserve. It's ridiculous. It's crazy. But Edgar Martinez, I want to talk a little bit about Edgar Martinez. I will be honest. He's one of those players that, I didn't see a lot of. I've seen clips of him, when and where he shined, and man, he really was a phenomenal hitter, and I've seen clips, I've seen, old games in which he played in, and it was amazing how he really took off after becoming a DH. He really took off in his 30s, and yeah, he's a Hall of Famer for sure. And I'm so happy for the Mariner fans because that fan base has been put through the grinder since 2001. It's been too long. I've been rooting for the Mariners to make the postseason for years now. They get a lot of crap in a lot of ways, and that's a good fan base. They've got a good fan base. They have a gorgeous stadium. Invest in it. But that's another. I'm going off on a tangent there, but going back to Edgar, I'm really happy for him. I'm happy for all of the guys that got inducted. They got it right this year. Overall, they got it right. I was hoping for 2 people this year, just 2, because I knew Mariano would get in. Everyone knew he would get in, but and Edgar, I'm happy he got in. But I was looking at Moose and I was looking at Doc, and I said, you know what, Doc, he's got to be a first ballot Hall of Famer. It's first ballot or bust, in my opinion, for Doc, because he was the best in his time. And Moose, I was arguably happier for him because I was just so sick and tired of waiting for him to get in. So yeah, happy for everybody that got in. Looking forward to the speeches. I'm so sad that I won't be able to hear Doc's speech, but I'm sure it'll be a great summer of speeches, and hopefully the writers have matured in a lot of ways, and they'll stop goofing around so much and stop trying to make points, and vote these guys in that deserve to be in the Hall of Fame. Vote them in. Stop playing around. Stop messing around. These guys have earned their spots in baseball immortality. So yeah, those are my thoughts on the Hall of Fame induction that just happened. So yeah, happy for all those guys. I'll catch you guys soon.